Hey Trekkies, it's summer, and you know what that means. It's time for Creation Entertainment's Trek to Las Vegas 2025. This year, the convention has been expanded to a 5-day schedule, August 6th through the 10th at the Rio Las Vegas Hotel. Meet all your favorite Star Trek pros in one place, and hey, maybe you swing by Vic's Lounge and you see our panel. It's a great way to meet people in person and have some fun with your fellow Trekkies. If you can't make it to Star Trek Las Vegas, of course, there's also other events around the country this year. Trek to Orlando, August 23rd through 24th. There's the Trek to New Jersey, September 6th and 7th. And finally, the Trek to Chicago, November 22nd and 23rd. We're looking forward to meeting as many of you as we can this year. So make sure that you get ready to trek to Las Vegas.
This is David Reed, and you are listening to Open Pike Night, the undressed hot dog of the podcasting world.
Is this thing on? Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Pike Night. I'm your host, John T. Bolds, here tonight with our amazing guests and our wonderful callers on stage to answer possibly the most important question about Season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But first, let me introduce my co-hosts, the man who would definitely screw up the timeline if a dying temporal agent handed him a cool new toy, Jesse Bailey.
Hey, you don't know... No, yeah, you're totally right. Never mind.
And the man who would definitely listen to what a zombie version of a dead friend was trying to tell him, host of Green Shirt, A Newbie's Trek to the Next Generation, Cameron Harrison.
What's that, John? Send more paramedics? Okay.
Classic reference. And tonight we have a fantastic guest with us, the man who helped put Toronto on the map, and the man who gave us Moorhammer, the man who has written for lines for Kirk, Spock, Uhura, and McCoy. Okay, fine, it's Carl Urban, but still... Please welcome the writer of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Lost in Translation, David Reed.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's great to have another writer on. We love talking to writers here on Open Pike Night, and we are excited when we were able to connect with you.
Writers are always excited that anyone remembers that we even exist or want to hear what we have to say. Hollywood is not super friendly to writers, so this is exciting. We don't get let out of our cage much.
Well, we've got your red meat. I don't know.
Yeah. Cam, you said that somebody else was recognizing David and wanted us to say hello, right?
Yeah, Bill Wolkoff. On Twitter, I was letting him know we were about to talk to you, and he said, say hello.
Hey, Bill. I haven't seen Bill in a while. I should reach out.
Yeah.
That's funny because he also said to remind you that they're always watching. I can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Season 3 of Strange New World now.
Well, I don't know what your most pressing question was, John, but I think, let's just get this out of the way right now. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. What's your guys' shorthand for that title? Because we call it Tomorrow Cubed over here. What do you guys call it?
What do we call it? In the writer's room, there wasn't like a working title for that one, and I wrote it by myself and chose the title by myself, and by that point it was like beyond the discussion in our room because we had to worry about the next couple.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we mostly just call it 203.
Okay.
Okay. Nice. Well, don't worry, we'll get to the most important question in time. Yeah.
Oh, but for now, let's go back in time, fittingly enough, to when you were a wee lad or whenever you first got the writing bug. How did you get interested in writing?
That is sort of connected to being very, very wee, because for me, I realized that a person could be a TV writer from watching Deep Space Nine. And it was me. So I grew up in sort of the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, and we didn't have... Deep Space Nine and Voyager were both syndicated late at night on the weekend. Deep Space Nine was Saturday night. Voyager was Sunday night. TNG, we didn't get it all. I only was able to watch TNG through borrowing videotapes from my friends who had cable and just illegally recorded them. But I was watching an episode of Deep Space Nine, And it just, I don't know why that one episode, I don't remember which one it was, but there was one that I was thinking about what does it mean to be a co-executive producer? And then I started thinking about that, and then I was watching the credits, and I was like, oh, and someone wrote this. And like their job is to just sit around and think about Star Trek all the time. And that must be like just amazing, right? Like that was the job that I wanted. So I was sort of more interested in being a Star Trek writer than being a writer. And it took me actually a really long time to come back around to it, because I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison to be a computer programmer, computer science. And I did like a last minute emergency pivot to being a film major because I realized how boring it was. I was just like, all I want to do is think about TV and movies, and I don't want to, I thought I was going to work on like video games. And I was like, I don't want to be the person whose job is to like code the interaction between a video game character's foot and the floor. I want to, tell stories. And so I found my way back to it. But it all sort of goes back to Trek for me, because my first memory as a person is watching Star Trek. I was a very small child, and I was at home with my parents, and my parents were in the next room arguing about whether or not they should give me any juice because I was sick, and my dad was worried I was going to throw up and it would like stain the furniture. And I was watching on TV Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And so that was like the beginning of my consciousness as far as I remember. And then I was obsessed with Star Trek my entire childhood, particularly original series, which I watched on VHS tape, and then Deep Space Nine. That was my Trek, and everything I've watched and loved everything else. But it's always come back to that. And for me, I don't even totally think of myself as a writer. I'm just like a person who kind of fell into this, and here I am. And I've written a bunch of TV now, and I've written some books and comic books and movies and things, but it's not, I don't totally think of it as like my identity. I also have directed, and I still feel like I would like to work on video games someday. So yeah, it just kind of
coding feet and floors.
I don't want to do that
still?
part.
No, okay.
I would like to
It's just a
write
little collision detection. Come on, man. It can't be that bad.
Yeah, I mean, someone's got to do it, right?
Well, usually I go chronologically, but I mean, this begs the question: were you trying to get onto a Star Trek show, or did someone just happen to reach out? How did you get on Strange New Worlds? How'd the dream happen?
So one of my very best friends is Henry Alonzo Myers.
Oh, okay.
So that helped. But yeah, so when I was working on The Magicians with Henry, so Henry eventually became the co-showrunner of The Magicians. He had started out as sort of the number two who ran the room when the showrunners weren't there. And then when he took over, then I became his number two. So I ran the room when he wasn't there, the writer's room. And around that time, our mutual friend, John McNamara, his wife, Julie McNamara, was running CBS All Access. She was the executive in charge of the programming decisions for CBS. And that was when Discovery had been ordered to series, but hadn't broadcast any episodes yet. And Discovery, the writer's room was taking a long time. They were just trying to get everything right. And there had been some behind-the-scenes showrunner changes and some drama there. And I got a call basically from Julie McNamara's office saying, would you be willing during your hiatus from The Magicians, because she knew that I was a huge Star Trek fan from John and just from me having dinner at their house a couple times. She was like, would you be willing to come over and just kind of consult on Star Trek Discovery? And what they ended up doing was, very rightfully, was they took the money that they might have spent on a new writer and they just extended all the writers who were already there. So it just didn't work out. And then they called me again for season 2, and I wasn't available. And then they stopped calling. And then when The Magicians was ending, I knew that there was what was being called at the time the Pike Spock spinoff, and because they weren't sure if they were going to be able. I think Rebecca Romaine was not totally, like, contractually, they hadn't worked out her deal yet, so they weren't sure if it was going to be all three of them from Disco season 2 or if it was just going to be Pike and Spock. But so I met to actually to do Henry's job, to be the co-showrunner, because I was an executive producer on The Magicians. I had some writing samples that were in that area, and I was like wildly not qualified for it. And so it was not real. It was not actually going to happen. And I ended up going to work on The Boys instead. And that offer just came in first. So I went and did that. And then about 2 weeks after I took the job on The Boys, then Henry called me and said, "Hey, great news. I'm going to be co-show running Strange New Worlds," which I don't think they'd even decided on the title yet. But he was like, I'm going to run this show. Come on over. Like,
did you know he was in the running, or was that kind of out of the blue?
No, I mean, I knew he was in the running, and I knew he had met on it, and he and Alex Kurtzman, they know each other from way back as well, and obviously he knows John McNamara as well, so he had the same people vouching for him. But yeah, we talked a lot about season 1, but I wasn't available to work on it, and it wasn't until I was done with season 3 of The Boys, and I had come back from filming that in Toronto, and I had been talking to Jack Quaid on set and talking about Star Trek, and about I was like, you should play Boimler in live action at some point, and I know the showrunner of Strange New Worlds. Let's see if I can make this happen. And I was talking to Henry, and he's like, well, if you're around, like, we kind of need some help. Like, they needed basically another upper level writer in the room to kind of just keep the trains moving when he and Akiva were busy with all of the production realities. And a show like Strange New Worlds has such a long post-production period because of all the visual effects, and you have to see those visual effects over and over and over, and they're giving notes, and they're saying, tweak this and move this ship a little this way, and the phaser should be a little more red or whatever. So he was very busy, and it just, the timing worked out. So I came in for season 2, and then I had to leave a little bit before we were done with season 2 to go back to The Boys, because that's sort of it's like, that's my day job in a way, and then I'm sort of consulting on Strange New Worlds. And then the exact same thing happened in season 3, where it was like, I knew I was done. I was like, I can't come back. I'm busy. And then things just lined up in the right way, and they needed someone right when I had some availability. So I came back and I wrote a couple more episodes in season 3. And I keep thinking like, oh, it'll work out again. But, they've already started. They've been picked up for season 4, and we're working on season 5 of The Boys. So I can't come back for season 4. But it was all really because of Henry, and because of John, and because of just being absolutely obsessed with Star Trek.
Letting people know your passion. Yeah.
And seriously, like, writing The Boys as your day job and just kind of doing Star Trek by night is amazing. Like,
just imagine
that's freaking awesome.
It worked out okay.
The whiplash. The tonal whiplash of going back and forth between, like, exploding dicks. I mean, that's not to be just totally crude. You said I could swear. But yeah, that's the energy for sure on The Boys. And then to come over and, Star Trek it's a utopian future. And it's so much about inclusivity and about optimism. And I think The Boys is trying to be a reflection of our flaws in a way that Star Trek is, like, trying to be an example of our positive future, obviously. So yeah, there's a difference in the jokes we might tell in each of those writers' rooms.
Yeah, I was thinking about it looking through your filmography. I was like, man, the swap between irreverent and reverent between those two writers' room, like that has got to be hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's fun. It's awesome. I love both of the shows. I love both of the universes. So happy to get the chance.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, going back, how did you go from film school graduate to getting a paid writing gig?
Yeah, I mean, it actually is entirely because of my wife. I was obsessed at the time. This is when we moved to Los Angeles. It was 2006, and we were dating. I wasn't married at the time. And we went to a screening of Battlestar Galactica, the sci-fi reimagined Battlestar, which at the time was like, I mean, I just loved it more than anything. And that's probably the reason why I actually committed to, like, moving to Los Angeles and pursuing TV writing. And so we went to a screening that the writers were going to do a Q&A at. And I went and talked to one of the writers who, actually, his name is Michael Taylor, who's written a bunch of amazing Star Trek, including maybe my 2 favorite Deep Space Nine episodes.
Yep.
But so I was talking to him, and he talks to a lot of genre fans, I think, and I was just being a fanboy and just being like, oh my god, I love your show so much. And he's like, cool, yeah, like back away slowly, please. And at the same time, my wife, or girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she went and talked to the wife of another one of the writers, and that lady, she was like, oh yeah, no, my husband will absolutely give you his business card, and he'll read your script, and he'll take you to lunch, and he'll give you whatever career advice you might want. That writer is David Weddle from Battlestar, who also wrote some Deep Space Nine. And he was just so open and generous with his time. And it was sort of because his wife made him, but he's a great guy anyway. So I ended up getting a job on Battlestar as the writer's assistant. And I learned just an insane amount from all of them and from Ron. When I went in to interview, I was sitting across from Ron Moore, who, is one of my greatest heroes in life. And it was so distracting because he had Worf's Batleth on the wall behind him. And I was just like, that's his actual, the screen used real Batleth from The Next Generation is just on Ron Moore's wall in his office. And I'm just like, sorry, Ron, I can't pay attention to anything you're saying in this job interview because I'm just staring at this. But yeah, so then from there, I worked as an assistant on a bunch of shows. I worked on I worked on Supernatural for a couple of years. I worked on Revolution. And I wrote a couple episodes of Supernatural and Revolution as an assistant, and then eventually got to be a full-time writer.
Very cool.
And what is it like to have, it must always be great to see your words brought to life by amazing actors, but some of your lines have been delivered by some of the most iconic actors of our time. We've got Michael Ironside, Robert Englund, Carol Kane.
You went deep.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, we've got like classic questions. Don't you worry.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it's obviously, it's amazing to have all of those very iconic and talented actors say all those things. It's also sometimes embarrassing because there was a time when I was the writer's assistant on Battlestar that the Sci-Fi Channel was doing sci-fi original movies, which aired on Saturday nights, right? And all kind of creature features. And so just through knowing some of the executives at Sci-Fi, they said, well, you're not in the Writers Guild yet. Maybe you'd want to try your hand at pitching on some of these. And I ended up writing a couple of them. And, I would say that in the production of those movies, the scripts were a suggestion. And they would kind of do whatever they wanted. So like Michael Ironside, I loved like Starship Troopers. I mean, it was just a super, super important movie to me when I was a teenager. And so he was in Lake Placid 3, which was amazing. And then I'm like watching the dailies for it, and I'm like, he also is just saying whatever he feels like. And I don't blame him for it. It was not, I was not an experienced writer, and I definitely didn't have experience with the physical production yet. So like one of the things that you really have to learn and figure out as a TV writer is like, there's a big difference between what you would like to have happen and what they can actually achieve. And so especially on a movie like that movie was shot in Bulgaria, outside of Sofia, Bulgaria. And so they didn't really have a lot of people around who could speak English. So there were a couple characters in that movie that were local Bulgarian actors who they later ADR, they replaced their voices with American actors in post, and you can really tell it's not done very seamlessly. But it was an amazing experience just to get to write something and to have it made, because at the time, like a lot of my friends were they were doing the same job as me, but they didn't have any of that sort of creative fulfillment of getting to see the process through, to see, the director's cut, see the dailies, see the different, have to go through the notes process. One of the most fascinating parts was the Sci-Fi Channel executives were like, look, we know who's watching these movies. They are people who are not, this is not what they're doing. They're like, this is on while they're doing something else. they told me that their market research showed that a lot of the audience was drinking while they were watching.
Interesting.
And a lot of the audience also didn't watch the whole thing. So they said you can't refer to any important plot information at the end of the movie that happened at the beginning, because no one is going to remember it because they just tuned in halfway through. So I learned a lot. I would hope that in our streaming age, you're choosing things more selectively and watching maybe the whole thing. But yeah,
I think I remember getting pretty lit up on whiskey sours too. I believe it was SS Doom Trooper, the sci-fi original movie. Like, yeah, that was an era of sci-fi, man. That was a
classic.
That was a fun time. Yeah.
The Secret, I haven't scrubbed those from my IMDb because I have enough pride in it that I'm like, I don't care if people know. It's like, it's embarrassing to a certain extent because they didn't turn out great. But the thing I will admit to y'all that is not on there is that I wrote twice as many as are on my IMDb. I didn't take credit for them because at a certain point,
Lake Placid 4 is the good one.
I mean, Lake Placid 4. Yeah. So, but there were a couple more that I did uncredited dialogue polishes on, just to basically write jokes to make the characters sound more human or to make the script funnier. And I did that on a couple movies. I won't tell you which ones because there's a reason that I didn't put my name on it.
That's fair. That's fair. We'll do some detective work and we'll send you some guesses and you can give us the thumbs up or thumbs down. Well, a lot of your previous work does involve the magical arts, let's say, on something like The Magicians or Supernatural, or I admit I haven't seen The Boys, so I don't know how much of their powers are science-based or just superhero.
Mostly science-based, yeah.
But how is it shifting into like the science and technobabble of Star Trek, coming from kind of those more esoteric worlds?
It's so much easier for me. I feel like particularly like writing for Spock is the easiest thing in the world for me because it's just so deeply ingrained in my psyche. I find myself in the Strange New Worlds writer's room just speaking in Spock dialogue. Like I'll just pitch something, but I'll just say it in that mannerism. And that, because of the long history of it, because you're building off of, 900 episodes, which I've seen all of, that you're just like, okay, I know how to do this. Whereas on something like The Boys or The Magicians, there's material that those shows are based off of, right? The Magicians is based on a trilogy of novels, and The Boys obviously a comic book. But you're still kind of figuring out the voice as you go, and you're trying to pick up the showrunner's tone and their voice. And that's a big challenge. That's actually the job of being a TV writer more than anything else, is just like being able to mimic tone. Because, 90% of TV writers are not running the show. They're working for someone else, and you're just trying to make your boss happy and to do good work inside the structure of what someone else has built. But for me, because Star Trek existed and I watched so much of it as a kid, my parents are both doctors. A lot of my family members are doctors and scientists. The science aspect of it is really appealing to me, and I want it to make sense. And I'm sure, listeners will then go back and watch the episodes that I wrote and be like, well, they don't make sense at all. But I'm like, okay, I want them to make sense in the way that Star Trek makes sense.
Right.
Which is like when it feels like.
Do you enjoy working with Aaron McDonald then?
Yeah, Aaron is great. We usually have either a sit down or a Zoom meeting at the beginning of the season where we just sort of go through the premises of the season, because one of the interesting things about Strange New Worlds is that you have to figure out what all of the episodes are going to be about very early in the process, because we have to start building the digital assets for the LED wall before you do any other prep work for the season. So that means that we have a meeting with Aaron where we talk through okay, so this is the episode where I had a childhood fixation on Bussard collectors, and so I want to talk about them. And I talk through the science of it, and then she'll say, well, here's the thing, I think she suggested for Lost in Translation, episode 206, the idea that the sort of extra dimensional creatures are attached to the deuterium. I think in the original pitch, it was just like, they're just like out there. They're just like mingling with the deuterium. And she was like, no, they're from another dimension and they like attach themselves. And that's how so she'll come in with notes like that. And she makes it make sense in a way that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then there's other stuff where like for episode 2 of 3 Lost, or Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, we had the idea of the tritium watch that would kind of show where a cold fusion reactor might be. And we came up with the science of that in the room. And so what we needed from her was just a cosine. And she was like, look, like, it sort of makes sense. And I was like, that's all I need. I just needed to sort of make
good
sense.
enough. It's Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tritium and nuclear devices are not they're kind of related, close enough.
Well,
You fooled me.
Bill Wolkoff had done some research for a previous show that he had worked on. And that's where that came from. In the room, he just was like, well, did you know this thing about cold fusion? And I was like, obviously no. And then while he was pitching it, I was just on my phone in the room, like looking up tritium. And I was like, oh, it's in divers' watches. And so instantly I was just like, well, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be, she's got this watch. And so then, we had to figure out some of the science around that still. But it really comes down to like Erin trying to help us get to the coolest story. And sometimes she'll suggest stuff that's not totally scientifically accurate, knowing that she's like, but I feel like this would just make a cooler story. So would you do this? And I'm like, or all of us, in the room say, yes, please, let's do the one that is just the most exciting.
Excellent. Well, we have our first caller up. Here's our good friend Platty with...
Hey, Open Pike Night. This is Peerless Platty M3. Hello, David Reed. Thanks for joining this week and talking to the guys who recently just ranked all the Strange New Worlds episodes and most definitely put one of yours in the top 3. Or at least one handsome devil of a caller did. Props to that, guys. Also props to... Oh, sorry, all. That was my friend Barney just walking by. He just came back from Costco on the way home today. Got a couple of those $1.50 hot dogs with the mustard and the ketchup and the relish and the onions on it. Oh, man. What a great smell combination just hanging over the recording studio I'm in right now. Just heavenly, heavenly, man. Oh, sorry. Where was it? David Reed, right. Dude, really enjoyed your work on Strange New Worlds, and I see you wrote for one of my other favorite series, Supernatural. That's awesome. I have recently been watching all the 90s Trek, but that's about to come to an end, and I need another sci-fi show to binge, so tell me all about your work on The Magicians. Sell that show to me. I've only heard a few things about it, but it's always been good. Tell me more good. Also, and feel free to place blame on the editing or production or the shitty depraved universes or whatever that was going on there. But for a year now, it's kind of been a thing here around Open Pike Night with Kirk wooing La'an with a hot dog with 0 condiments. Come on, man. Personally, I just don't see the appeal of going in for a flirt with just a naked wiener in your hand, but hey, whatever. How the heck did that happen? Hot dogs aside, thank you, David, for one of my top Strange New Worlds episodes in Tomorrow. Really liked Lost in Translation as well. I look forward to seeing whatever else you do. Have a good one.
That's the most important question, isn't it?
That was...
Yes, that is the most important question. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I did listen. I listened to your episode about Tomorrow and the discussion of the hot dogs. And what I have to say about that is, so I was not on set for that episode because I had to go back to my day job on The Boys.
No. Okay.
So if you want in the future to place specific blame for this,
Or reward someone for the right choice.
Depending on your perspective, I would direct that to Onitra Johnson because she was very helpfully covering for me. She was the one who, was standing next to them while they were making these decisions. So actually, I as a person who doesn't like ketchup, which is a weird thing, but I actually kind of understand it. But I definitely didn't write it with that in mind. I was picturing a fully loaded hot dog. And I think
Thank you.
When you think about television production, though, there's a couple things that happen. Like, characters very rarely get wet because it's such a pain, because then you have to do another take and they have to go get dried off and put on new clothes. So when you put a bunch of like ketchup and mustard and whatever on a hot dog, it just makes a big mess for production, because then it's like it's going to get on his face. And sometimes it's just what will the actor eat? That's a whole thing where we had on, to pivot to his other question about the magicians, we had some actors on the magicians who were either vegan or vegetarian or just had some food allergies. And so we would write scenes of them eating, and then we would have the prop department who handles that kind of the food they actually eat. They have to make make a hot dog, but out of entirely vegetarian ingredients or whatever.
Wow.
And make it look like a not veggie hot dog or whatever. So I don't know if that was the case here, but the pitch, the quick pitch for the magicians is it's like sort of an acid trip version of Harry Potter meets Narnia. Very often when it was first in production, I would describe it as Harry Potter with drugs and sex. And it's a coming of age story. It's a story about figuring out who you are and what the world really is, but with the trappings of magic and through the lens of like it's for people who grew up with Harry Potter and are now grown-ups and want to take a story like that more seriously, like with more human emotion and, darker themes. But it also is very funny. Like, one of the things that happened on that show over time was it became more of a comedy, which Henry Alonzo Myers, the Strange New Worlds showrunner, he was very much responsible for that. The show was not totally a comedy at first, and he wrote a couple very funny episodes, and we're like, oh, we're allowed to do that? We can just make dick jokes? Okay, we're definitely doing that from now on.
Well, in that vein, I also think Kirk would enjoy a raw dog, so there you go.
Yeah.
That's where I stand.
I have to say that answer is very illuminating because I obviously just recently rewatched that episode, and there's some definite like gesturing that Kurt does with the hot dog. So it makes sense that, for production reasons, they'd be like, do not put condiments on this. But yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be in the no naked dogs group, but I really appreciate having the answer to it. And you can bet that we will ask Onitra about that. We will get her back for a third time and talk nothing but hot dogs with
Tell her.
Yes.
Yeah, tell her that I put her on the spot, and I said, why? Why, Onitra?
What were the discussions had on set at that stand?
Yeah.
My creative vision wasn't respected. No, she did a great job. It was actually super helpful for me because to be able to trust that the episode was in good hands when I had to have, I had to go off and have nothing to do with it. And I would just sneak out of our writer's room occasionally, and just because we can watch it being filmed live from anywhere. I just could log in and watch the filming,
so cool.
And that was a lot of fun. But I regretted not being able to actually be there for that one.
Dang. Yeah.
Well, I've heard it was like one of the coldest days of the year in Toronto while they were shooting that, so maybe you actually dodged a bullet there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when isn't it the coldest day of the year in Toronto? The Boys also films in Toronto, so I've spent a lot of time in Toronto. I love the city. It's freezing.
Well, we'll get into Star Trek specific a little bit. I mean, you talked about your extensive history with it. What would you consider what we call here on Open Pike your home Trek? Like, what is always the first and foremost Trek series that you love the most?
Oh, that's easy. It's Deep Space Nine. 100%.
Excellent choice.
I mean, my experience with it was that was the one that was airing like when I was at my most formative age. I was 10 years old when it started, and about to graduate from high school when it ended. And so that's a time when you just find stuff that you really love that's yours.
Yep.
And I had watched Star Trek with my parents a little, but I think this is actually a pretty common phenomenon. Like, I became too much of a Star Trek nerd for them, and they were like backing away. Like, we can't go where you're going with you. And so Deep Space Nine, though, it had both it did basically what Strange New Worlds is doing now, which is that episodic stories, but serialized character through lines. And then obviously by the end of it, it's like a 10-part series finale, which was unprecedented. I mean, even among really prestigious dramas at the time, that was just unheard of. It was so inspiring, and I just loved the characters. And, also I loved the original series, and I love The Next Generation. Voyager, I was like, I watched all of it, and it was just never quite for me. But the interesting thing being in a Star Trek writer's room is that there's so many Voyager diehards. Kirsten Byers, who's written on so many of the Kurtzman era shows, like lives and breathes for Voyager. Obviously, she's written a bunch of the novels. She kind of took over that story after the show. And then there's like me and Catherine Lynn and Henry in the room who are like, but Deep Space Nine, isn't it just known that that's the best one? And the fights we have, like the almost screaming arguments about which series is the best. It gets to be a lot.
It's great. It's great that your coming of age series was something amazing like DS9, because mine was Sequest, and it does not hold up.
Look, I
on
love
repeat viewings.
I love Sequest too. I work with Rockney O'Bannon on a show called Revolution. And he had a poster in his office that NBC gave him after Sequest premiered. And it said, I forget the exact numbers, but it was like 66 million people took the plunge. And then the first episode got like a 25 share, which means that 25% of people with their TV on at the time were watching Sequest.
Wow.
Which, I mean, if you get a 0.5 share now, that would be incredible. And so, yeah, that show was if you got those numbers now, it would be tenfold the biggest show in the world. And now we treat it like that tiny little cult genre show that no one watched.
Dolphin show.
The Dolphin show.
No, I loved it. All
right, HD remaster, new effects. Come on, we can bring Sequest back. We can do it.
I'd take that. I'd take that. Anything to get more Roy Schneider on my screen.
Yeah. All right, here's our next caller, Melanie.
Hi guys, and hello David. This is Melanie from Germany, calling in again. David, I looked you up on the Internet Movie Database, and you wrote multiple fantastic episodes of Supernatural, The Boys, and Strange New Worlds, to name a few. For Strange New Worlds, you did an episode that's basically a love story, and you wrote Lost in Translation, more of a mystery episode. And I liked them both very much, so thanks for that. Both are very different episodes. What kind of genre do you like to write for the most? And I'm very curious to know how it works. Are you in a pool of writers who get assigned a specific episode and can write what you want to a certain degree? And how big of an influence do you have on the story and the characters and what's happening in your story? Have you written episodes for the 3rd season, and will you also write for the 4th season? And what would you like to write about in the future? Or what series would you like to write for? Okay, I think I've asked you enough questions, so that's it from me. Thanks again for everything, and live long and prosper.
Possibly the most economic use of the 90 seconds that Open Pike Night offers that we've ever had. Very well done, Melanie.
That was information dense. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you for watching and enjoying. Some of these things we've talked about a little bit. I did write 2 episodes I co-wrote 2 episodes for the 3rd season. I'm not going to do anything for the 4th season, at least currently. My favorite genre to write for is science fiction. I would say genre television that can include fantasy as well. But definitely I'm a sci-fi person. The writer's room on Strange New Worlds is very collaborative. We come in at the beginning of the season. Everyone pitches the episodes that they would like to see. You don't necessarily have any control over which one you're actually going to write. So you have to kind of pitch episodes that you're like, I would both like to write this and also just would like to see this and would like to champion someone else getting to do this if it doesn't come up for you. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but like one of the episodes that I pitched for season 2 was Those Old Scientists, because I work on The Boys with Jack and I love, like capital L love Lower Decks. It's just exactly my shit. And I love it so much that I was telling him, I was like, you just need to play this character in live action. Jack is amazing on The Boys. And so I was talking, like when we first started the season 2 room, that was the first thing I pitched, was like, there should be a crossover. You should get Jack Quaid and you should get Tawny Newsome. They both look enough like their characters. And I pitched it actually was, in my initial pitch, it was exactly what it ended up being, which was they're doing a lame mission on the Cerritos about, around this portal that does nothing. And it turns out that the portal actually does one thing, which is send you 120 years into the past. And they land on the Enterprise. And there was an episode of The Magicians that Henry and I did where one of the characters, he basically gets stuck in the astral plane. And so he's watching everyone go about their business. They all think that he's dead, basically. And he's not. He's like basically kind of an astral ghost. And so I was like, what if we did something like that, where the point, because that the pitch of that episode was this character Penny. It's like, what if he had to watch an episode of The Magicians and he hated it? Like he's watching the show that he's in and he hates the show because it just seemed like it'd be very funny. And so the pitch for this was, what if the world's biggest, like, Strange New Worlds fan landed on the Enterprise and then had to be cool? Like, just like, everyone is just like, don't blow up the timeline. And then because I was not going to be able to stick around, I couldn't write it. But luckily we had Kat and Bill, who both have animation experience, and Kat has, written for Lower Decks. It was perfect, and they did a great job. And I helped punch it up. I added jokes, the like Pike flippy communicator joke and a couple others throughout. And so that was great. But what we end up really doing is, we break all of the stories together. We figure out the exact plot and all the character moves as a big group. And then a writer is assigned. You go off and write an outline, and then you go off and write a script. And the showrunners or upper level writers will sometimes rewrite the script to make it fit with the characters' voices, or just punch things up, make it work for production. But yeah, extremely, extremely collaborative.
Can I ask, did you get to meet Jonathan Frakes, who directed it?
Oh my God, no, I didn't. And then Kat is now like best friends with Frakes, and she's texting with him every day. She's like, we're sitting in the room for season 3, and she was just like, I've got to send my Wordle score to Frakes. And I'm like, you stole this friendship with Riker from me. I've never met him. I mean, I've been in a room with him, and I've been on a Zoom call with him, but we've never gotten to have a moment. So,
Dang.
Well, David, I gotta say, I don't know that anybody knew that Those Old Scientists was your pitch, because, I mean, we heaped a lot of praise on Catherine and Bill and obviously the performers for that episode, but like, dude, like Star Trek fans owe you so much. Like it was an instant classic.
It's complicated because, like, they did all the heavy lifting. I just was like, wouldn't it be funny if, and then the basic premise of it. But, really the hardest part of that was making it tonally work. And I know that Bill has talked to you about that on the show, but it's really a bigger challenge than it seems, because one of the things that we sort of wrestled with was that Akiva was very, very concerned that the antics of those characters would be too much and it would overpower the characters that, as you guys have said on several episodes, like, we only have 10. Like, it's not enough. We want more. We've every season we're like, what if we did 15? And they're like, we don't want to spend that much money. So the challenge of not letting it become just a Lower Decks episode and still having some emotional relevance to the characters that we need to be caring the most about, which is our band of series regulars. So that was the part that, Bill and Kat really needed to pick up the ball and do that. But, like, I pitched the idea for episode 5, but I knew from the beginning I wasn't going to write that one, because as soon as I said it, Henry is like, oh, I know how to do that. And I was like, yep, you're the person. He and Kat were the people that needed to write that one. But I didn't pitch the idea for episode 3, what became Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. That episode came from Akiva wanting to do a Romulan thing. And then Akiva wanting to direct an episode early in the season that he wanted to film in New York City. And you were probably asking yourself, why is it set in Toronto then?
Why
and
is it set in Toronto then?
Yeah.
he approached CBS Studios and said, hey, we have a plan. We're going to shoot an episode in New York City. We're going to take, our crew and our cast, and we're going to do it on location. And they said, no, you're not. That sounds really expensive. I listening to your episode on that, or your podcast on that episode, you guys were talking about how these modern day time travel episodes come from budget. And that is 100% not the case here. Very often, I imagine it is. In this case, this was an expensive episode. Like, we did a lot of stuff in this that cost a lot of money. And it was not from that at all. It was just wanting to do this story. He wanted to do a contemporary story that was about the Romulans. And then I was like, I don't totally get it. Because as a, it's like me and Kat Lynn and Kirsten Byers in the room, who are the biggest canon nerds, who would tell you but according to Memory Alpha, we can't do that for these reasons. And so we had to go back and forth. And honestly, it was just me and Akiva arguing about well, we could do this, and then we could judge things this way, and we can make it make sense. And in the end, when I watched the producer's cut of the episode, Akiva and Henry had actually cut the bit that Sarah, the Romulan agent, says at the end about time, healing itself, redirecting these moments, all the stuff about I've been here for a very long time. And they were just kind of scared. They were like, people are not going to react well to this. And they thought it was just too confusing. And I was like, no, you have to. This is the only way that this makes any sense to me.
Dude, thank you again. Yes. Because specifically a ton of Trekkies were worried, right? A lot of people voiced concern when the character of La'an was even announced, because they're like, well, that'll never work for all these canon reasons. And I was gonna just specifically ask, were you told while writing that, just move the eugenics wars forward? Or was it something that you decided oh, we need to explain this because otherwise people will ask about it? So that's brilliant.
The eugenics war, moving it around in the timeline, it was a huge, week-long debate. And there are definitely, obviously there's two factions. There's the faction of people who are well, Star Trek has always been essentially an alternate universe. And then there's the other faction, which, I think I subscribe to this theory, which is that you do want it to be our future because it's just more relatable. Even if you set aside the aspirational aspect of Star Trek, which I think it's very hard to do. I just think that it's difficult to have a casual audience of the people who aren't on Memory Alpha or listening to Star Trek podcasts, for them to understand that the eugenics wars happened in the 90s and World War III happened and all these things that are not in our lived experience. It's just confusing. So that was our pitch to sort of not permanently answer the question, but to just make it someone else's problem. One of the things that you have to accept as a Star Trek writer is that someone else is going to come along later and they're going to retcon your shit, in the same way that we go in and we're well, this one thing, I didn't really think that made sense. So I'm going to try to explain it a different way. And it's some person who is 3 years old right now is going to be the showrunner of a Star Trek show 30 years from now. And they're going to have a different idea, a different interpretation. And that's great. That's awesome. I'm happy to have my moment here, but it's not going to be the last one. And we had seen the script for Picard season 2, the finale, where they have the Project Con envelope. And there was a little bit more, if I remember correctly, there's a little bit more in the script than ended up in the final cut of that, about that. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just try to make that all make sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing Picard season 3 paid no mind to season 2 because otherwise things really could have gotten tangled there.
But it's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, it doesn't have to be 30 years from now that someone comes in and is like, I'm doing something else. It could be Terry Matalas coming in tomorrow. He could steal my job tomorrow.
Well, speaking of tomorrow, Melanie also asked, what else do you want to write in the future? You've achieved your dream of writing on Trek. Any other franchises or properties?
There's not really, like, I've done, besides Star Trek, it's like once you've summited Everest, like for me personally, that's what this feels like. So, I would love to run a Star Trek show and be the final arbiter at some point in the future. But I also understand that is, that's really rarefied air. Very, very few people are going to get that chance. I also really would like to make a new space opera. I think that culturally we've become sort of fixated, and I think it's because of how much money they cost on a couple of franchises. And if you look at, the TV landscape, I just feel like, why don't we have an alternative to sort of these big two franchises? I would also love, I love Star Wars too. It was never quite, it didn't mean as much to me as a kid. Also just because there was less of it. When I was a kid, there were 3 movies and that was it, and a bunch of novels that I read that were great. So yeah, I would like to just make a new, insane, perhaps slightly more unhinged version of Star Trek. Like a little bit of boys' energy into the space opera.
That'd be amazing.
Well, I don't want to speak for all Trekkies everywhere, but here I go. Dude, you totally get it, and you should get your own Star Trek series or your own space opera. Like, I'm comfortable with that. I think everybody listening to this would be comfortable with that, so the luck in the world.
From your lips to Alex Kurtzman's ears.
Seriously, we will send emails.
Yeah.
I've been pitching, not that this is like the one that I would, if I could make any Star Trek show, I don't know if it would be this, but the one that's right there. I'm like, young Kirk, like, let's just do it. Let's just get this spinoff going. Like, build the show around him.
Yeah.
But I do also, I've heard from y'all that this version of Kirk is still, like, there's still some hesitation. There's still a little bit of...
He's grown on... that's probably coming from me, and I'll say he's grown on me over season 2. And I will also say this leads perfectly into our next couple calls.
I was going to say that. And also, personally, man, I bought in right away. I don't care. Like, they told me he was Kirk. I was like, that's Kirk, because they said it was. I'm good.
There we go. Yeah. We had one right in. David Jones asked, can you talk about setting the episode and shooting in Toronto? So very well answered there on that. So here is our friend Zoe.
Open Pike Night. This is the USS Cinema. Zoe Richardson, Captain Commanding, also host of Backlook Cinema, the podcast. And I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk to David Reed, great writer. And I honestly don't have a question. I just wanted to praise David Reed for the episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, particularly because it's the episode that really got me on board with the new incarnation of Captain Kirk. I really got to feel that I was seeing the Captain Kirk that I grew up with in this episode. And I think that the writing had a lot to do with that. And everybody's doing a great job over there at Strange New Worlds. But really, this particular episode really got me on board with, the whole Captain Kirk of it all. Or at least now he's Lieutenant Kirk, and then he'll be Captain Kirk later. You know what I'm talking about. In any case, as you can tell, I'm on shore leave. I managed to get a shore leave on Earth. Who can believe that? And thank you guys for the good work you're doing. Have a great one.
Awesome. Thanks, Zoe. That's great. That's great to hear. I love when people appreciate Paul and his interpretation of Kirk. It's a tightrope that he's walking because, it's an iconic performance. There's mannerisms that he is very careful to not just ape, to not do an imitation. In the same way that I thought Chris Pine, you're seeing this man at different eras of his life. And I know that if you looked at me as a 20-something and then as a 30-something and then as a 40-something, they're different interpretations of the same person. And I think that's what each one of them is doing. And when we write Kirk for the show, and it just so like not out of any plan on my part, but I just happened to write the 2 Kirk episodes in season 2. And spoiler alert, perhaps more in season 3. I don't work there anymore. I'll just say whatever I want. They can't fire me.
The floodgates are open.
Yeah, but it really is a combination of, obviously William Shatner, but then I'm also trying to put a little bit of the Chris Pine energy in there as well. And then Paul is doing his thing, and Paul has very specific ideas about like why this Kirk at this stage in his life he's more of a try hard at this stage because he hasn't gotten to his goal yet. And some of the swagger that he gets as a captain, it's because he's a captain. It's because he got there, he did it. And right now he has to be a little bit more by the book. But he also has this like youthful mischievousness that's like wants to get out a little bit, but he's like, no, I've got to keep it under control because I'm not where I want to be. He has ambition. So yeah, he's really fun to write, and I'm glad that people are warming up to him, and I think that they really will warm even further as the show goes on.
You did write 2 of his episodes, although you wrote an alternate timeline Kirk and then the prime timeline Kirk. Did you approach writing those Kirks differently, or did you just kind of write him as Kirk?
Well, I didn't know when I was writing the first one that I was going to write the second one. I knew that I had pitched the idea for the episode, and I knew that episode was going to happen, because they were already building the digital assets for the inside of the Bannon station. And I would say I didn't write them differently, except for thinking all the time about how the one in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow was different because of the specific trauma of, his species sort of being on the run and losing Sam. And like when we were pitching the episode, for like, usually you're not pitching dialogue when you're standing in front of a board full of cards and saying to Akiva and Henry, like, here's what I think the episode should be. But one line of dialogue that was in there from the very beginning was, wait, Sam is alive? And that, to me, is the key to the whole episode, because that's what he needed. And that's the reason why he could see more, like, beyond his own timeline and beyond his own life. He was like, there's a better world, and it's hers. And so I'm willing to try to help her get to that. And so, that version of him is a more mature version because he's the captain already. And he's been through so much, like such terrible stuff has happened to him. And like we see in the beginning in the teaser, like shutting Spock down and being like, this is their problem. We're not dealing with that. Like, that's just a very different person than who he is, especially if you look at how he is with Uhura, where he's like, you have a problem, I'm going to try to fix it. Like, that's the commonality, is that he wants to help people in both, but the one in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is jaded and he's been burned. He's tried that and had it have bad outcomes. And so that's why he is the way he is at the beginning of the episode. And then by the end of the episode, he's sort of opened up into more of the Kirk that we know.
I mean, I got goosebumps when you said Sam's alive, and I remember feeling that way in the episode.
100%.
But I feel like you have just absolutely nailed a lot of what people forget about Shatner's Kirk, because yes, he was, swagger and good looking and always gets the girl, but he's also described as a stack of books with legs. And he said, when I was in the academy, I was downright morose. And it's like, I feel like you really are hitting the nail on the head with what a prequel series is supposed to do, which is flesh out the characters we already know and give us more sides to that. So, man, you're killing it.
Thank you. That's great.
All right, play Pixie's call.
Here is our next caller and good friend Pixie.
Hi guys. Hi David. Mr. Reed. I don't know how formal we're supposed to be with this. My name is Pixie and I am a huge fan. I love both of the episodes you wrote for season 2, and I would argue that they're the best episodes in the season, and I just really love the way you wrote Kirk. I will admit that I was skeptical of having a Jim Kirk at all in this show, but I really fell in love with him from the very start of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, And Lost in Translation is one of my top 3 episodes in the entire show, and a large part of that is how you wrote Jim. Beyond just singing you praise, though, I did want to ask you a question. One of my favorite things about how you write Jim Kirk is the fact that it seems like he sees food as a comfort. He buys himself and La'an hot dogs when La'an is clearly tense. He offers Nyota a cookie. He does these things that are comforting in these times of high stress that revolve around food. And I really appreciated that because one of my favorite TOS episodes is Conscience of the King, where we discover Jim Kirk survived a famine on Tarsus 4, and it's a piece of backstory I've always thought was criminally overlooked. So I was wondering if there are any specific episodes or pieces of canon that you pulled from while writing this Jim Kirk. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear everything you have to say. Bye!
Awesome. Thank you, Pixie. Great to hear from you. The thing about the food is really funny because it was not totally intentional, and I think... And this is dumb. This is a dumb answer. You might be disappointed by this answer. It's I think actually coming from the 2009 JJ Trek and Chris Pine sitting there with the apple, and it just that mannerism was just so funny to me. And when I think about this version of Kirk, and I'm trying to make him somewhere in between those two, between the books with legs, the sack of books with legs, and that. It's like obviously the Chris Pine interpretation is not consistent with the way that he's described in TOS in the Academy. But I just think that he's a guy who enjoys life, and food is such a big part of my enjoyment of life. All of that just came up while I was writing the scenes. It was stuff that wasn't in the outlines. It wasn't in when we were figuring out what the scenes would be. It was just like, I might have had a cookie in front of me while I was writing it. And so I was like, here, he's going to have it. He's going to be obsessed with these cookies. I just needed him to leave. Honestly, the thing about that scene was I just needed him to leave so that something could happen. And I was like, why would he leave? Why would I leave? I would leave to go get snacks.
All right.
Love it.
Writing from the heart. So, okay. Speaking of consistency, you know how Trekkies are, man. Time travel functions in a lot of different ways in Star Trek. It's often whatever the script needs, that's how it works right now. Were you given any guidelines or restrictions around that, or did they just tell you, hey, whatever you need to make tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow work, do time travel that way?
Interesting. I think my follow-up to that would just be like, who would you say they are? Because it's just like, it's sort of the inmates running the prison. Like, there's not a lot of... I mean, there's obviously oversight from the showrunners, right? But in terms of things like that, the reason that me and Kat and Kirsten are there is to tell them how it works.
Nice.
And so what they will come back and say is like, this doesn't make emotional sense, or this doesn't or I, as just reading the episode, I just don't get it. Or it's just not working for whatever reason. But if it's about the rules of the franchise and the rules of time travel or something, like you said, there's a million different interpretations. The entire premise of the Kelvinverse just completely discounts the way time travel worked most of the time in the original series and the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Enterprise. So it's like, what do you do? And that's when people criticize anything inside of the modern Treks, and they do it from a place of canon, I think that I both understand it, and I'm like, well, but what do you really think is going on here? Like, we're just making this up. Like, this is not... Yeah. There's no rules because the original series is wildly inconsistent. Like, they went warp 13. Like, it's crazy. There's episodes where they're just like, hey, we just went to the past. Like, that's not how that works now. And you like, the United Federation of Planets didn't exist early on in TOS. Yeah. So we have to pick and choose which canon we respect. And there's times when we'll have a heated debate because they'll have picked out some moment from Voyager that meant something to them. And they're like, that's why this has to work in this way. And I'm like, well, I'm picking this moment from Deep Space Nine because that meant more to me. And so that's why, it works this other way. Like, even in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, the Department of Temporal Investigations, like, that's not who should be doing this. Like, there's other time travel entities, but it's the one that's from Deep Space Nine. And so I was like, that's the one I'm doing. And then our graphics person, Tim Peel, who is a huge Star Trek fan, he was like, well, what if we use T-cars on the little time travel device? And that's a Voyager reference, right? So it's like, we're all pulling from different stuff, and we're all deciding as a little collective. And then ultimately, Akiva and Henry have to be the arbiters of, is this making the show better? And if it is, then great. And if it's not, then we try something else.
That's an excellent answer. It's honestly one of my favorite parts about doing Open Pike Night is talking to writers, because, so frequently online, in the social media sphere, which is basically a dirty word at this point, like, the criticism always comes down to bad writing, lazy writing, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, you don't know that. Like, you don't know the people that are doing it. You don't understand their intentions. You just didn't like it. And it's okay to not like it. But, like, don't ascribe a fake made-up reason to that. And that's part of why I like getting to hear the reasons and, the thought processes behind it. Because it's like, none of the stuff that ends up on the screen just happened. Somebody advocated for that, and it's there on purpose. And I think my remaining questions for this episode, I don't know, you could maybe call them a little less serious. So let's go ahead and play Abby's question.
Yeah, here we go.
Hey, Open Pike and Dave. This is Abby Summer from the First Flight Podcast. Love talking to writers, and especially with Lost in Translation and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I'm wondering, I have a feeling that you knew where you wanted to go with these episodes. You had the big foundational pieces out there, but they're both so emotional. How do you work with balancing that amount of emotion that needs to go into the writing of an episode while still making sure that big plot points, especially when there's time travel involved, are laid out in a way that the audience can really still comprehend and take in a way that does justice to both parts of those stories? Because I know that I couldn't find balance between the deep emotion and the wonderful story. So kudos to you. Hope this finds you all well, and we'll talk soon.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it is a challenge in some episodes, and it's not in others. So, like, an interesting thing about specifically Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is that of all the television I've ever written, many, like 30 some episodes, and then been involved in hundreds more, it's the one that was the easiest. And I just wrote the script, and then Akiva added a couple lines of dialogue at the end in the scene where La'an and Kirk finally kiss. He added a joke about her thinking he didn't know about the Bible. That was him. But everything else was just, I wrote a first draft and I turned it in, and they were like, great. And then we shot it. And so it was completely instinctual and completely just like, well, this is how it feels like this story should go. And then there's other ones. There's an episode in season 3 that, I can't really talk much about, but it was the hardest episode I've ever worked on for any show. And it turned out, I think, pretty well. I will, wait to see what the response is. But it was so difficult because we just didn't quite know what the point of it was in the beginning. And it took us a lot of drafts and a lot of, frankly, different concepts for what the episode really was before we figured out why this episode needed to exist. And with the emotion and balancing that, to me, like, the reason you watch these things is actually to see humans talking to each other. Like, it's much more about that than the sort of whiz-bang science fiction craziness. But I love the whiz-bang science fiction craziness. So, like, to me, that's the icing. And the core of it is the emotion and the characters feeling their feelings. And, like, another example of that is in Lost in Translation. There's a scene where La'an and Kirk meet again on the Enterprise. And that scene wasn't in the outline. I never pitched it to anyone. I co-wrote that episode with Amitra, and I didn't even pitch it to her. I just added it because I was like, this needs to happen. Because I had just finished writing the other one. And I was like, these two need to have a moment. We had talked in the room about, we should find some moment for them. And people were like, maybe it's just a look on the bridge or whatever. And then, all the stuff about his dad and about Like, well, it was really important. If he was willing to, if his dad was willing to leave his family behind, it must have been for something important. And La'an having the perspective of like, yeah, I was one of those people. Like, all of that was just instinctual. Like, this is what these people would have to say to each other. And then there's other parts that are just like, you're moving pieces on a chessboard, and I need this person to get from A to B. I need Kirk to leave the room, so he needs a cookie because I need something to happen for the plot. And that stuff is much more architected, and it's more thought out in advance. And then we call them writer's opportunities. Like, there's all these little things, these little moments that you add that are just to humanize it and just to make it feel like these are real human beings.
Okay, so I have two not super serious questions. One's like super deeply a Trekkie question, so I'll save that one. When we're in the alternate Toronto, there are featured several posters for a movie called Blood Train.
Oh, I'm so glad you're asking this question.
Did you? Oh my God. Okay. This train is bound for blood. Is this you? Was this like the writers went, oh, let's put Blood Train in here?
Was this one of your sci-fi movies?
Yeah. Does it exist in some version in your head? Or was it like, I need to come up with a name for a movie. Here's what it is.
Okay. So this is such a deeper well than you can even imagine. So Blood Train, we did need to, because, we were shooting that in Dundas Square, which is covered on these LED billboards. And so if you saw the original footage of that scene, it was advertising actual movies and soft drinks and braziers and things. And we had to replace all of them for copyright purposes and whatever. So Henry called me. I was working on season 4 of The Boys, and he was like, we need to put stuff on those. Do you have ideas? And I said, well, obviously it has to be Blood Train, because Blood Train is a movie that the Supernatural writers, when they were stuck, they would pitch on. And it was a movie, the premise, and it was like a joke, right? It started as a joke, but then it got more serious. And so Sarah Gamble, who is one of my very best friends and was my boss on The Magicians. She co-created that show, and she's a good friend of Henry's, and I worked for her on Supernatural as well. She was always talking about Blood Train, and it's a movie about a bunch of vampires who it's like a Orient Express type long haul passenger train that the vampires engineer a situation so it gets stuck in a tunnel, and then they are going to eat everyone on the train. And then it's like a horror movie about human beings trying to get off this fucking train, right? So it was Sarah and Robbie Thompson. Robbie is another TV writer, and he's great. And it was their sort of secret side project, and they were always saying, we're going to write this someday. So this was a shout out to Sarah Gamble and to Robbie. And the other shout out to Sarah Gamble is Sarah the Romulan, because Sarah's name is spelled Sera. And I was trying to think of a Romulan name that would sound like a human name. And I was like, this is the perfect name, because also Sarah is a Romulan in real life. So I think, and she would be happy for me to say that. She agrees. She's always like, I'm a Slytherin, I'm a Romulan. So there's that side of it. And the other thing that's crazy is that, and I'm speaking slightly out of school, but Robbie Thompson, the other architect of this, completely coincidentally, you might just want to keep looking at the credits for future seasons of Strange New Worlds.
Oh,
That's
man.
all I have to say about that.
Open Pike Night is going to be the Blood Train podcast, you guys. Like, I could not be prouder. And actually, David, you already answered my next question. There was some speculation about the character of Sarah. There are some similarities between this episode, and I think it's called Future's End in Voyager, where Sarah Silverman plays a character. So a lot of people figured, oh, she's named after Sarah Silverman, as like a nice callback to that character. So man, we're just getting gems left and right here. This is great.
Well, and I on the subject of names, I've got another. This is just a clarification, because I listened to your episode about tomorrow, and you mentioned that Agent Emily at the end is spelled strangely. So it's not like a weird way of saying Emily. it's Agent Emily's last name, and it's named after my brother-in-law, whose name is Ramon Emily. So Lieutenant Ramon in 206 is named after him, and Agent Emily in 203 is named after him. He is the biggest Star Trek fan I have ever met in my life. And like, I went to space camp when I was 10, and I was the biggest Star Trek fan at space camp. So just think about that. Think about how when I met this dude, I was like, holy shit. Like, he loves Star Trek 100 times more than me. His basement is like 100% full of Star Trek models. And anyway, so it's named after him. He didn't even notice it, though, because he thought it was Agent Emily. And it was like his wife who was like, was that just
Star Trek? That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah, for future reference, David, our last names are Bolds, Bailey, and Harrison. So, like, no pressure. I figured I'd throw it out there.
It's difficult because I don't work there anymore. But, maybe
now
maybe
you
I'll
don't
be
work
back
there
someday.
anymore.
Yeah. My favorite part, of course, is the I was just telling these guys, the kind of the X-Files type characters fitting in the UFO conspiracy nuts into Star Trek is just like something that makes me happy. It's like a comfort Star Trek moment. Can you just talk about that aspect of the script?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was we just thought it would be very funny. Of someone who's like, so like, because you want to hide the banana on who that person is. Like Sarah's character, you need to have the audience think, oh, I know the reason they were there.
Right.
On the A side, so that you can reveal that it's something else on the B side. And so on the A side, I was like, if we could make it funny, if you could make it like, oh, this is a tragic character who's like so close to understanding the truth, but understands none of it, then you don't suspect that they're going to come back at the end and be the secret Romulan agent. That's where that came from. And I'm, as a huge X-Files fan, as a kid and still. So a lot of X-Files vibes going into that for sure.
It's the best kind of red herring for sure. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah.
And I know you weren't on set, but I do have a tiny technical question about that episode. Did they film the flashback shots for Subspace Rhapsody for unsung? Did they film that while they were filming Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow? Did they have to go back and redo the Under the Sheets, romance movie shots?
I think they had to go back. I'm pretty sure they went back and filmed that later. Because they did, one of the things that wasn't in the original cut and was added after is there's a little like nighttime interlude with La'an and Kirk in the hotel. That wasn't in the script. That was added after I had moved back to the boys. So I wasn't, totally aware of everything they shot for that. But I think that the stuff in Subspace Rhapsody was new.
Cool. Thank you. So with Lost in Translation, did your history of writing horror help you get that episode, or how did you end up there?
I pitched the episode because I love Bizarre collectors. I had the technical manual from TNG. I had a giant poster that was like the cutaway of the Enterprise D on my wall as a kid. It's elsewhere in my house still. I have it still. And I just was like, those are awesome. And I want to go inside the nacelle. I want to whatever. And the horror aspect of it was actually a trick. It was a trick, I'll admit now, because one of the things that Akiva wanted to do that season was he was like, we should do a horror episode. And I was like, yeah, sure. It'll be horror. Great. And I'm like, whatever. Like, I'll add that part to it. It'll work. And so we got, I'm trying to remember when it was assigned, but I was either going to co-write 7 or 6. And because I had to go back to the boys, 6 made more sense. So that's how that landed. But I had pitched the episode, so I knew how to do it. I knew how it should feel, and I knew like what the emotional beats of it would be. And the horror stuff in it was sort of the icing. It was just like, this'll kind of give us our unique tone for this one.
Yeah, I remember watching the episode for the first time and texting the guys right after the zombie Himmer reveal with just head exploding emojis across the thing. I was so excited for zombie Himmer.
I mean, I love zombies.
Was Hemmer part of your original pitch?
In the 3-sentence pitch, no. It was very, very early, though, in the season, before I think we'd even come in and actually pitched our episode concepts, that since I hadn't worked on season 1, I had sort of missed the Hammer train. And that was an idea that everyone liked, was just like, we have to find some way to bring him back because he was unexpectedly such like a beloved character. I mean, like the people making the show loved him, but the audience reaction was crazy. And so that was sort of a delightful like addition that it definitely sealed the deal that this should be, who are a horror, memory, trauma, grief, like all of that stuff was swimming in the same ocean, and Hammer fit very cleanly.
Cleanly while covered in maggots. But totally works.
Yeah.
So being a big Trekkie yourself, like, did you feel the weight of writing the moment that Kirk and Spock meet for the first time?
Yes, and like I wanted to downplay it. I wanted to make it feel like we're not going to do the version where the music swells and it's all close-ups, and you want it to just feel like these are two dudes meeting in a bar. And the thing I'll say about it is that, to go back to what I was saying before about knowing someone else is going to come in later, like it's the first moment that they met for now. Like there's also the moment where they met for the first time in JJ's movie, and obviously that's a different chronology. And we're claiming this is in the prime timeline. And then later on, someone else could come along and be like, nope, they actually met as toddlers. Like they met in grade school. They met
Star Trek babies.
Oh, yeah. We've had lots of conversation about Star Trek babies. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
I'm here for it. I'll run that show.
Yeah.
There you go. Here you go. Well, aside from getting 2 of the Kirk episodes, you also got 2 very Pelia-heavy episodes. What was your approach to writing her character?
We didn't know. We didn't. So I had written 203 before. I mean, I think we knew it was Carol Kane. We definitely knew it was Carol Kane, but we didn't know what she was going to do, like in terms of the accent. And so my most recent experience watching Carol was from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And so I was picturing that. Like, I don't know why, because I knew that she wouldn't do that. Like, that was a very insane character. But that's what I was writing to. And so I wrote sort of a jokier, like, slightly more misanthropic version of her because of that. And then they just never changed it. And so when she came in and was doing slightly a different thing, I was like, well, this works too. And it was really fun because I like having that comedic relief that turns into something more emotional, particularly in Lost in Translation. I will admit that, like, the story that she tells at the end of Lost in Translation about, like, it starts as Una saying, it's because I got a C, and then Pelia's like, no, it's not. It's because of Hammer. Like, I wrote the opposite of that. And then Akiva was like, no, we need to do the more emotional thing last. No. So what I wrote originally was that Pelia is like, you're mad at me because of Hammer and because of loss and because of your deep trauma about losing a friend. And then she's like, no, I'm not. Like, you were a bitch to me at school. And that was, it was ending on a joke. And then that's one example of where the powers that be came in and were like, we need to take this more seriously.
Did you write the I only said that because he's dead line?
Yes, absolutely.
I love that line.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
That was another one where I had written the scene originally with her being more earnest. And I was like, I need to put some vinegar on this because it's just, it was too earnest and I just couldn't imagine it playing well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we spoke with Onitra about this episode a little bit as well. She watched the TOS episode, The Devil in the Dark, with us, and we talked about some of the influence that episode had here. Did you have any specific other Trek episodes in mind? I mean, very clearly you wanted to explore the Bussard collectors, which we deeply appreciate, but was there like any episode tonal touchstones that you had, or was it all technical for you?
You know, there's episodes that I thought about. Like, one of the things that we do when we're pitching the season in the beginning, when we're saying, here's our 10 episodes, here's what we call them arenas. These are what the 10 places that we're going to go. These are the 10 Strange New Worlds. One of the things that we do for the purposes of selling that document to the executives is we'll say, here are the tonal comps. here's the other episodes in the franchise that we can point to that are like this, so that you don't get scared that we're breaking your very valuable property. And so, if I remember correctly, Terok Nor was one of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like The Devil in the Dark might have actually been the other one, because it was what I wanted to do was to have to both find like that light horror angle, but also have it be an episode that really is about communication and about connection with other people, and how that can be very difficult because of the roadblocks we put in our own way. And so it was not necessarily thinking about like, here's the other episodes that have done similar things, so much as like, what are the areas of the characters that we want to explore, or that as just a fan watching season 1, and I had early access to it because of Henry, so I kind of was more up to speed on it. But the stuff about Uhura's parents, like I was like, I deeply want to know more about that and how that affected her. So it was not so much trying to ape other episodes as like sometimes using other episodes as like, this will work in Star Trek.
Interesting.
Right. Now I'm suddenly wondering if they used The Way to Eden and Bada Bing, Bada Bang to sell the musical episode, because no comps anywhere in Star Trek.
I honestly think that they were just like, look, guys, this one's weird.
900 episodes. We gotta do a musical at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what they actually did was, this is a form-breaking episode in the style of,
Gotcha.
and then other episodes that are just like weird, but not in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron, I cannot wait for you to see Terok Nor, like top 10 Star Trek episode ever. Seriously.
Yes, I'm making my way through DS9 now. Second season, but it's so good. It's so good.
So in one of your episodes, Jim Kirk is killed, and the other he gets punched in the face. So how did Jim Kirk hurt you? Like, what did he do?
It's funny to watch pretty people suffer. So on the topic of him dying, I'm sort of a Generations apologist. Like, I saw that movie at the exact right time to just love it and to love what they were doing. Everyone who's like, it's just a big episode of Star Trek, I'm like, yes, awesome. Yeah. Like, that's exactly what I wanted. Saw it in the theater day one, saw it a million more times after that. I've talked to Ron about like the sort of fan response to killing Kirk, landing a bridge on him. And, to me, it's like that moment is actually really beautiful. And like what he says specifically to Picard about like, this is, he's basically saying like, this is what I would do for any captain of the Enterprise. Like, that's great to me. I feel like he died doing what he loved. And so killing him in Tomorrow was not something that was like controversial at all for us, because it wasn't really him.
Right.
And, it's kind of a classic of the genre of like, you've got an alternate version, like murder that dude. But it was like, what is going to hurt La'an the most? Like, what is going to give her some more? Because what La'an was really needing was trauma. She didn't have any before this.
Right. Yeah.
So we were like, what if we gave her first ever taste of trauma? No, actually it was almost the opposite of that. It was like, we wanted her to have like a beautiful experience and like to really take away something like meaningful about life being good from it. But at the same time, we can't bring him along. And one of the things I added in the script that wasn't in the outline was her pitch to him that like, what if I could though? Like, what if you just came along and we just had a couple Kirks? And it was just like, it felt like something she would say, but we couldn't. So he had to die.
Yeah. It's, to your point earlier, I think it's really human. And that's why you watch Star Trek, right? Is for the human experience and watching them interact, because anybody given that kind of opportunity would go, but what if, So I think it works really, really well. And it does. I mean, that paired with her scene at the end of that episode makes it really very powerful.
I was going to ask, how do you write La'an breaks down and cries in a way that rips the entire audience's heart, still beating from their chest, into a script? How do you write that?
I mean, let's go and look. I I'll just open the script.
Oh, that's
I'll
awesome.
Tell you.
That's the first time we've gotten that response.
in a general way, like the thing I'll say about it is that it wasn't. I don't remember really imagining that it was going to be that emotionally that heavy. Yeah. Okay. So this is. I'll read this little bit of the script to you, and it'll surprise you, because it's like I didn't really think that it would go to that place. That was something that Christina brought, and that Amanda Rowe, who directed the episode, brought, and I wasn't on the set. So when I saw it in the cut, I was like, okay. So Kirk, she's talking about, place of birth, Riverside, Iowa, blah, 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 blah. And there's a moment where Kirk says, Iowa on Earth. Yes, ma'am. Is that really why you're calling? And it just says, La'an takes a beat, holding back a swell of emotions. And she says, that's it. I'm a stickler for an orderly security record. He says, blah, 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 blah. I've got some gems on Sam for his permanent file, kind of flirting a little bit. And it says, La'an puts on a fake smile. And she says, that sounds lovely. With a polite nod, she ends the call and sits there feeling both connected and more alone than ever. And that's how the script ends.
Wow.
So it was meant to be, you sometimes need to leave room for the actors to feel what they've been through. Like they're the ones who have to pick it up and actually bring it to life. And so in this case, she asked me on the Zoom call, what if I cried at the end? And I said, I can see that. I also have a pretty strong feeling generally that characters on Star Trek don't really get that emotional usually. They're pretty well put together because they're at work. Like something that I feel like has been sort of lost in some areas of the franchise is that these people are professionals at work.
Co-workers,
and they like are messy people sometimes. And so I was like, she's home alone. She's in her quarters. No one else is there. She can have an emotional reaction, but it just shouldn't be histrionic. And I think Chrissy found a way to make it feel deeply, deeply emotional and to bring it further than I think I would have wanted to script it. Because, like, if you write and then they break down in tears, sometimes you'll get a reaction that's 5 times bigger than what you're thinking. And so what I really wanted was something believable, subtle, and human. And I think she brought it, and she really felt it. And, like, I think that it was the first episode that let her feel that, and she wanted to take advantage of it. So, yeah.
Amazing.
You guys, I say this a lot, but this show really is magic. Like, just all the way through. Especially with magic nuggets like this. Like, if you're not listening to Open Pike Night just because Strange New Worlds isn't on the air right now, you are absolutely missing out. And we are going to use that to sell it. Man.
Yeah, that's great. The way you wrote it, it kind of reminds me of the mini Picard endings, right? Kind of introspective, calm, but worried about the future, gazing out his window. But I love that we got the Lon version of that.
That's why you hire someone like Chrissy, is because she can elevate.
We talked a little bit earlier about how Strange New Worlds is very good as a prequel series at fleshing out the characters we already know, giving them some more dimension, really connecting us to them. And Lost in Translation might give more to Uhura's story than all of TOS ever did. Was that a goal that you had at the start of that? Like, let's give this character something about her that people don't know?
Not just for this episode, but in general, absolutely yes. I mean, that's the goal of the show for her character, is that, it's an area where, frankly, we're like, canon has to back off, because it's not the 1960s. And we don't think that this character's end-all, be-all should be that she's a space telephone operator. And Celia is an amazing performer. I'm not sure, actually, I don't want to incorrectly use the wrong pronoun, but Celia is not a person who you want to just leave sitting on the bridge. Like, you want to give that character, as much depth and humanity as everybody else, obviously, but also it's special because we don't know that much. Like, we know so much about Spock. We know so much about even, Kirk as a guest star in these episodes. And we don't really know that much about Uhura. And so finding places where we can explore who she is, like the backstory that we never knew about, also finding areas of like, just what are her quirks? Like the idea that she's a workaholic, like, I don't remember where that came up, but like it really became a through line for the season. And it explains a bunch of stuff about her, really. Like her career, like that as we know from canon, she mostly is going to be on board the Enterprise until after Star Trek 6. And so you want to just understand that person as a person and not just as like a exposition delivery device.
Yeah.
All that said, in this episode, the challenge was like, we already know what happened to her parents and her brother. We want to find out what that really means to her today and why that is a problem for her. And like the idea that we were just talking about of like, these people are professionals at work. Like she's trying so hard to hold it together. And that is not good for you. It's not good for the brain to do that. And so we wanted to really challenge her. And this story felt like the right way to do that. And in the end, like also pairing her with Kirk, we wanted to seed that friendship. And I just felt like it would be kind of interesting to know that really of his ride or dies on the TOS era Enterprise, that it was like Uhura really who he was ride or die with first.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It really gives her scene, when they do have to go steal the Enterprise, which I realized as I was rewatching the Star Trek movies, Uhura is the only person other than Spock who's done the whole steal the Enterprise thing before this movie, because the rest of them aren't present in that episode. But it really makes sense that she would get that linchpin role of like, no, I'm the person on the ground that needs to make sure that this goes off without a hitch. And it, like you said, it creates a great reason for her to want to stay on the Enterprise for so long, because when she comes into the series, she's looking for where she feels like she belongs. And we learn here, this is why she feels like the Enterprise is where she belongs. And that's a master stroke, man.
And Kirk is also proving to her that he's like wildly loyal. Like he's a guy that like once he's on your side, you've got him and he'll go through hell for you. And I think we think of it sometimes as like, why did Kirk pick them? But I like to think of it the other way of like, why did these people choose to work with Kirk and for Kirk? And like, why would they follow him anywhere? It's because of what he's proven about himself. And so this episode is one where, my intention with Kirk was like, you've got to make it clear that like he's on vacation and he like almost dies several times trying to help her. And she punched him in the face. Like the way that they meet is that she punches him out.
Punches him in the face, yeah.
But he just like, he sees a lost bird and he's got to bring it home. And that's, I find to be very charming.
And very Kirk.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, one final line we like to ask our writers is, in your prolific history of 30 TV shows and helping on hundreds of others and movies, some listed on IMDb, some not, do you have a favorite line you've written?
Oh my gosh. That's a really good question.
Or just the first one that pops to mind? I know it's putting you on the spot.
Nothing really comes to mind. The moment that comes to mind, that it's not even in a script that I wrote, but it's a script. It was a moment that I pitched that changed the course of The Magicians. And it's actually in an episode that Henry wrote. There's a character named Ember, who is the sort of half man, half ram god of Fillory, which is sort of the Narnia equivalent in that show. And there's a place called the Wellspring, which is like where all magic comes from. And our characters are racing to it. The bad guy is racing to it. And you get there, and Ember is surprisingly there. And the question is, who's going to be able to slurp up the magic in the Wellspring first? You physically drink it, the water from the Wellspring, to get this power. And they get there, and they're like, Ember, what are you doing? And he's like, I pooped in it. And it was such a crazy pitch that I was like absolutely certain everyone would just laugh like it was a joke and then they'd move on. And then instead they were like, no, we're doing that. That's happening. And it completely changed the tone of the show forever and made it much more open to insanity and slight silliness. But like, that was an important plot point. Like, it really was like, oh, we're fucked now because he pooped in that wellspring.
I think that's a great answer to that question.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
And I'll just take it as I pooped in it as your answer to your favorite line.
I pooped in it.
Yep.
That's the answer.
So we've been talking about it season 2 a lot, but do you have a one-word tease for season 3? Not something that's going to give away any plot points, but when we're watching season 3 in 2025, we're going to point at the screen and say that's what David was talking about with this one word.
And if you want to give us a scoop and say Doctor or Who,
yeah,
be my guest. Feel free.
Look, I can tell you that no one would like that more than the writers of Strange New Worlds. There's some very, very deep Doctor Who appreciation happening over there. No, so my answer, I'm going to tell you, as I said before, since I don't currently work there, I can kind of say whatever I want. So I'm going to go slightly more spoilerish than you're probably expecting.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you my one word, and that one word is Farragut.
Oh. All right. That's nice and meaty and solid. I like it.
So just think about it.
All right.
What could it mean? Where might we go? You know?
All right, so I'll give you a spoiler, David. We are absolutely going to be hitting you up for a second interview after season 3 airs, just so you're fully aware.
Awesome.
So, David Reed, Open Pike Night is an open mic night themed podcast. Do you have a joke for us this evening?
I do. I wrote a Star Trek themed joke for this occasion, but you should know I wrote it with the help of my 11-year-old son. And yes. I did not necessarily write a good joke. This is a dumb joke, and I think the punchline will be fairly obvious. But here goes. All right. So, after a long day of working on the bridge, what does Pike throw in the fireplace in his quarters?
Mm-hmm.
It's the captain's log.
There it is.
It's the first ever captain's log joke that is not about poop.
That's true.
Which is interesting
Yeah.
because of that
which
poop
is
that you
crazy
made.
because I write so many jokes about poop. And
an 11-year-old helped with this. All my son's jokes are about poop.
And so I will admit that like my first attempt, the first joke I was working on was about forked Klingon penises. The second one was about Garrick and Bashir being secret lovers. The third one was a captain's log joke about poop. And then I landed here because, you know.
Sometimes it's about the journey.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
And let's be real, like that's the biggest open secret in Star Trek, right? Like,
I mean, and not, I don't know. I feel like it's not even a secret. I feel like it's just
it's
canon.
not. It's just there.
Absolutely. What do you have to pitch for our listeners? What would you recommend they go watch first?
Well, right now, season 4 of The Boys is airing on Amazon Prime Video, so give that a look. A lot of people have, and they like it. Season 3 of Strange New Worlds will come out eventually. I literally have no idea when. And other than that, I don't really do social media anymore, so I'm not there. So just like go about your business and just have a good time.
Beautiful.
Very good.
David Reed, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. Thank you for this fantastic conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Well, thank you to David Reed, and thank you to all of our amazing callers, and very much thank you to all our patrons, especially our 25-minute set contributors, Mark, Pam, and Steve. Jesse, if people want to support us on Patreon or call in for our shows, how can they do that?
I'm going to tell you, John, but I do need to reiterate that I am David's favorite. If you need more Open Pike Night in your life, the easiest way to do that is to go to openpike.com. There you can get access to all of our links, our merch, our Patreon, our newsletter, everything all in one place to make it very easy. And if you're more of the social media type, just find us wherever you mediate your socials at Open Pike.
Excellent. And Cameron, where can folks find out more about you?
Yeah, listen to John and I and others talk about The Next Generation and David's true favorite, DS9, over on Green Shirt, a newbie's
It
Trek
is always good
TNG.
to know when a Star Trek writer has a correct opinion about the best Trek series. And I say that as a Strange New Worlds podcaster. Well, thank you all once again. We have to go clean out. I don't know. David sent us a script page that talks about Lake Placid in our back rooms here at the Open Pike Night stage. So we got to go clean out some crocodiles. So be sure to clean up after yourself. Be sure to tip your servers. You can go anywhere you want, but you can't stay here.